Come on and stand and let's worship the Lord this morning. He is blessed for me. Love like a hurricane, I am a tree, bending beneath the weight of His wind and mercy. When all others said it, I am unaware of these afflictions He gives by glory. And I realize just how beautiful you are and how your affections are for me. And oh, how He loves us so. Oh, how He loves us. How He loves us so. Oh, this mercy. He is jealous for me. Love's like a hurricane. I am a tree bending beneath the weight of His wind and mercy. When all of a sudden I am unaware of these afflictions He brings by your glory. And I realize just how beautiful you are and how great your affections are for me. Oh, how He loves us so. Oh, how He loves you this morning. How He loves. In spite of the big things this morning, He loves you. Yeah. Oh, yes, He loves us. Oh,
but verse 4 is where my key text is from. You people, let me stop. Let me start over. Job is in calamity. Job is suffering from a pandemic of one. It's just him. And what he's going through, and the fiery trial, and the fiery tribulation, the horror, the loss of his children, the loss of his income, the loss of his health, all of these things weighing on the mind of mortal man the way they would. His friends show up to comfort him. And right at the beginning, I kind of like those fellows, because the Bible says that they sat with him and were so astonished at his calamity that they sat there and didn't say anything for 7 days. I know people can't be quiet for 7 days. But to sit there and be quiet for 7 days as a symbol of respect, man, I thought, hey, these guys are great. But it ended up what they were doing was just thinking about all the things they were fixing to accuse Job of. And so they began to accuse Job of all these things, and all this calamity has come upon you because of your sin and your failure and your lack of integrity. And so Job responds to his friend Zophar. With friends like that, who needs enemies? Then Job spoke again. If you can turn my monitor up just a little bit, brother. Then Job spoke again. You people really don't know everything. You people really know everything, don't you? And when you die, wisdom will die with you. Well, I know a few things myself, and you're no better than I am. Who doesn't know these things that you've been saying? Yet my friends laugh at me, for I call on God and expect an answer. I'm a just and blameless man, yet they laugh at me. And my sermon title is from the second line of the 4th verse, for I call on God and expect an answer. And I want to minister for a few minutes on the message I've entitled, Praying with Expectation. Praying with expectation. Now, it is a fact. It is true that the world's going through things, and right now, the dumbest thing you can do right now is go on Facebook looking for advice. 99% of the time, the dumbest thing you can do is go on Facebook, look for advice. But occasionally people post things that are sound, and they probably benefit people. They hear a few things that they needed to hear. But most of the times, in my humble opinion, a lot of it is just it's just somebody's spin on a particular situation in which they probably don't have a right to call themselves an expert. I'm not an expert. I was told a long time ago that an expert was a has-been drip under pressure. Think about that. An expert is a has-been drip under pressure. And I'm certainly not an expert about anything that I'm aware of. But when you look at what some people are saying, there are some people that are saying, oh, this COVID-19, anything, you don't need to worry about it, just go on about your life. There's some people that's moved into their bunker, and it's into the world. I would say until you've had it, you probably should have a strong opinion. Because if you haven't experienced it, it's like that Italian cream cake made that I talked about last week, and those cookies that I made. You don't really know what they taste like until you experience it, and ain't none of you going to experience it because I done ate them all. So until you've had the COVID, you probably don't know for sure what it's like. But we do know a few things that I think is based on rational science. And we know that it is not, that's the French word for new. or nouveau is actually, I think, the French word for new. But it's new. There is not a general resistance in the population to it. There is some thought, and you got to realize it'll take 5 years before they know everything. But there is some thought emerging since the common cold is a coronavirus, that there's some thought emerging that if you've had dozens and dozens and dozens and dozens of colds over the years, that you might have just a little less susceptibility to people who have relatively been healthy and never had a cold. Those thoughts are beginning to emerge. I don't think anybody can tell you yes or no. But the different aspects of it, and the thing that makes it so fearful is it is a fact that the vast majority of the population of the world do not have the T cells and the antibodies running in their body, giving them a natural immunity to this virus. It is a fact. And I have looked these statistics up. I did not take anybody's word for it. I took the statistics and counted and did the math based on my research. And it is a fact that the death rate is 10 to 20 times higher in COVID than it is the flu. If you look at the amount of people that got the flu and the amount of people that died, if you look at the amount of people that in 3 short months have gotten COVID and that percentage that died, then you can see the percentage of deaths from COVID at a much higher rate than the flu. So it is scary. And that is not abnormal. You want to know something else that's scary? Walking through the woods and hearing a rattlesnake. You want to know something that's scary? Walking through Walmart and seeing a guy pull a gun out. You want to know something else that's scary? Getting your mother-in-law mad on her birthday. So there's a lot of things in this life that are scary. And we've had to deal with them since we were a child. So what we're going through now and what people are facing now are not irrational fears. Maybe some of them is a little beyond what perhaps it'll turn out being. Maybe it won't be quite as bad. But the point is, it's so doctors love to use statistics. You'll go in and you'll have a bump, you'll have a lump, you'll have a symptom, and you'll do the dumbest thing you do. You'll get on Google and begin to self-diagnose. And you'll research and you'll come up with a disease. It matches your symptoms exactly. And then you'll go to the doctor and you'll say, well, my symptoms, I know I shouldn't have done this, doc, but I Google my symptoms and that's why I'm here, because it's such and such disease. And the doctor will say, oh, well, Mrs. Smith, Ms. Brown, Mr. Whatever, only about 100 people in America get that disease in a year. Well, all that means to me is that 100 people a year has a 100% chance of getting it. And you go into the doctor and be misdiagnosed because that doctor's prejudiced by percentage. So there's 1,000 trains of thought concerning what the world is going through. But Job was going through something that I would consider even more. The threat of a disease is horrible. The threat of being sick in an ICU or a ventilator is horrible. I'm not minimizing that. But Job had lost his children. And Job had lost his livelihood. And Job had boils from the top of his head to the soles of his feet that itched and made it painful to sit. And when he laid on them, they would hurt. And he would toss and he would turn and he would twist. He was living a living nightmare. And on top of all of this, his friends are coming to him and they're telling him that everything he's facing and everything he's going through and every problem he's got is really his fault. You brought this on yourself. You did something you shouldn't have done. You didn't do something that you should have done. You lied, you cheated, you stole, you did that. And they're trying to tell him that everything that is happening to you is happening to you because you are a bad person. Now, I don't want to be kicked anytime, but please don't kick when I'm down. I mean, I remember my father when I was 11 years old, and he was doing his very first brake job. And my father was anything but a mechanic. And he was doing his very first brake job. He got one side jacked up, and he couldn't remember how all the parts went. And so he had to jack the other side up and take the wheel off to look at that side so he could fix the other side. And I don't even remember what advice I gave him, but I came out and gave him some brilliant 11-year-old advice. And I remember him stopping and looking at me and saying, boy, if you ain't got nothing constructive to say to me to encourage me, just go back in that house. He was not happy with my advice. And the trials and the tribulations, when I'm down, out, when I'm broken, when I'm hurting, the last thing I need is for somebody to tell me how lousy I am and how dumb I am and how big a mistake I have made in my life. If I blow it, trust me, I know I've blown it, and I really don't need anybody to tell me. But that's what was going on with Job. And he was being berated, and he was in pain, and he was grieving his children. But Job still had his faith in God. And his faith in God was at a point that was at a higher, my Lord, my God, I feel the anointing coming on me. His faith in God was at a higher level. His understanding about the mercy of God and the compassion of God was at a higher level than what was in his friend's life. Indeed, at the end of Job, God told 3 men, you have not spoke right concerning me as my friend Job has. You must understand that those friends said God has turned his back on you. God doesn't care about you. God is punishing you. God doesn't love you. God has brought retribution to you because everything that you have done wrong. But Job is telling them, my friends are laughing at me. Why are they laughing at me? Because when I call on God, and I expect an answer. Well, why were they laughing at him? Because they had the idea that God was up there as some unmerciful, unkind, belligerent, ill-tempered individual that when humankind messed up and the wrath of God got on top of their lives and began to destroy them, that they were wasting their time to bother to utter prayer. Now we know that nothing that happened to Job because of his sin. God himself told the devil, Job, have you looked at my servant Job, who is a perfect man, who hates evil and loves righteousness. So we know that what Job was going through was not because of a lack of righteousness. God was allowing to be tested. It wasn't what he did. It wasn't what he didn't do. It was because God knew that he could trust Job with trouble. And why did he could trust Job with trouble? Because Job had the words come out of his own mouth. When I prayed, even in the middle of my calamity, I prayed with an expectation that God is going to hear my prayer. And that's why his friends laughed, because they thought, oh, who does he think he is? If God bothered to like him or even cared about him anymore, he would have never, ever allowed this to happen to him. I can tell you sometimes good people will go through bad things and have bad seasons in their life, and you will never in this lifetime find a logical reason why. Because the reason was spiritual. It was beyond the thought processes of mortal man. And God thinks above us. And there are things that will happen to us that we will never be able to understand in this life, but we will know it all by and by. This is not an hour for now I'll lay me down to sleep. A bag of peanuts at my feet. Die before I wake. Give them to my brother Jake. This is not the hour for lay me down to sleep prayers. This is the hour for supplication. David said in Psalms the 86th chapter, verse 6, give ear, O Lord, to my prayer. Attend to the voice of my supplication. That word attend there in the original Hebrew is the Hebrew word kashal. And it means to hearken, to give heed, to listen intently. The word voice is from the Greek word koel, and it really means voice. And by the way, I didn't watch The Voice. I don't watch that show. I'm just not into singing. I don't watch movies and musicals. It's just never, I guess it's a guy thing. But there's a program called The Voice, and a Church of God pastor from Mississippi won it, from what I hear. So he was on The Voice, and that word voice triggered that memory. I hope that blessed you. Give heed, hearken, listen intently to the voice. The voice of what? My supplication. Talk on y'all. And it means earnest, fervent prayer. It isn't, well, Lord, I'm just coming to you today. Is that my iPhone? Who's that texting me? Well, I ain't taking that. I don't even like them. Lord, was that the doorbell? Honey, go in there and say it's the doorbell. All right, I'm back, Jesus. Lord, I want to come to you today because I got me some dry skin going on somewhere. I got me some problems that we need to discuss. See, that is not what this word means. That is not what this word means. This word means to cry aloud and to spare not. This word means to get on your face. And if you're not physically able to assume that type of posture because of your health, then spiritually, on your inside man, while you're sitting in your chair, get on your face spiritually and cry out to God. Let the doorbell ring. Let the cat meow. Let the dog bark. Let your husband ask where his glasses are. Let your iPhone go off 15,000 times. But get on your face spiritually and cry out to God until you have heard from heaven and the presence of the Holy Ghost has filled the room where you are seeking Him. Supplication. The psalmist David said, attend to the voice of my supplication. You see, supplication has a voice. The only reason you can hear me right now is because God is allowing my vocal cords and the wind in my lungs and my tongue to move and manipulate the sounds of the air rushing past my vocal cords to formulate words. If I was up here without the ability to speak, it would not benefit you. It would not edify you unless I could sign and you use sign language. But it is essential to understand that when we move beyond our man-family prayer, when we move beyond our now I'll lay me down to sleep, when we move beyond grace over that fried chicken and tater tots, and when we get along with God and pray, and there's nothing left inside the voice of supplication that reaches out to God, and that is how Job knew to pray. I pray and I expect God to hear me. There is a difference between prayer and supplication that goes beyond just volume. It goes beyond posture. In the Hebrew, there are places in which the word prayer translates as a prayer hymn. The Hebrews had a lot of standard prayers. The Roman Catholic Church, they have prayers. I'm not necessarily saying there's anything wrong with that, but if it becomes repetitive and it really ain't coming out of your heart, then it's just words. You see what I mean? Even Jesus said, they shall be heard for their much speaking, praying long, long prayers. But prayer to the Hebrews were different in the fact that there were different prayers for different occasions. So they would make some of the prayers as a song because it was easier to remember them. You know, the first grade, A, B, C, D, E, F, G, H, I, J, K, L, M, N, O, P. Well, they did a song because it's easier to remember that. And if you watch some of these commercials, like the guy that does the pillows, mypillow.com, it's a song. And I dare say that probably at least half of you in here could probably sing that song if you've ever seen more than one of his commercials. But the book of Psalms itself, we will see many times in which prayer is called for. In matter of fact, Psalms, David called a psalm a prayer. And so there are different ways to pray, and there are different types of prayer. And I'm not discounting prayer that isn't spitting and slobbering and crying and weeping. I'm not discounting. There's a time to get your kids and say, now I'll lay me to sleep. That's great. You're teaching a 2-year-old how to pray. There's a time to say grace and thank the Lord for the food. And there's a time in which you don't have an hour to pray, and you're driving down the road and you're just praying the best you can. So I'm not minimizing all that, but I'm simply saying that there is a prayer that is defined as something higher and something deeper than just regular, ordinary, everyday prayer. The word supplication in the Hebrew and the Greek is defined as an earnest, full plea. In the Hebrew word insinuates to beg. And while God doesn't require begging, to the Hebrews, it was the strongest word to define a mental and spiritual posture that is assumed in prayer. When I pray the way that Job prayed, Job did not pray out of a selfish heart. Job did not pray judgmentally. Job was angry. Job was mad. Job complained. Job even accused God. But he didn't accuse him and didn't speak about him the way that his 3 friends did. Because Job still was resolved in his spirit to believe in the mercy of God. If there was anybody that had a reason not to believe in the mercy of God, but when we get on our knees and we deprive ourselves of our distractions and we make God the priority of the moment, of that hour, of that day, of that season, and we cry aloud and spare not with a fiery desire, that supplication has a voice that bypasses every demonic power and goes straight to the throne of God. The effectual, fervent prayer of a righteous man avails much. Ephesians 6:18, praying always with all types of prayer and supplication. The prayer and supplication were at the same time. Why didn't he just say praying always with all occasion? Praying always with all types of prayers and supplication in the Spirit. Being watchful to this end with all perseverance and supplication for all the saints. Philippians 4 verse 6, be anxious for nothing, but in everything by prayer and supplication with thanksgiving, let your requests be known unto God. Pray with expectancy. Pray with faith that God is not going to desert you in your